Hello, my name is Lee Prenzler. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Prenzler.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Prenzler. Marleen Suarez is the Democrat candidate for Treasurer of Madison County, Illinois. She will face incumbent Republican Treasurer Kurt Prenzler on the November 4th general election ballot. 2 years ago, Ms. Suarez was the Democrat candidate for state representative in the 112th State Rep District. She was defeated by incumbent Republican Dwight Kay. As a candidate for treasurer, she is emphasizing her experience as a small business owner, as an investment professional, and how those two qualities will help her to turn around the treasurer's office. Ms. Suarez is an attorney practicing criminal defense, family law, and civil litigation. She has been a Precinct Committeewoman since 2009, a member of the Southwestern Illinois Democratic Women, and is a former member of the Board of Directors of CASA of Southwestern Illinois. Marleen Suarez, welcome to Conversation.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, actually. I expect this is going to be a pretty interesting discussion.
I hope so.
So let's just, cut to the chase. You've decided you want to be the treasurer of Madison County. Why?
Well, I've reached this time in my life, both personally and professionally, where it's time to give back to the community. I was raised in a family that has always been very big on community service, and throughout the years, I've done a lot of volunteer work, and I've always been a little bit involved in Democratic politics as a poll watcher, and working as a Democratic Precinct Committeewoman. And a couple of years ago, I was approached by some people in the party to run for office, and it wasn't something I had really considered. I had a wonderful experience doing that, and I ran a real grassroots campaign based on just door-to-door knocking with a big volunteer base. And I went against an incumbent, and there were 50,000 votes cast in that race, and I lost by only a few hundred votes. So it was very encouraging, and I guess you could say I caught the bug a little bit. 2 years, flash forward 2 years, and I was trying to decide what I wanted to do. I have a busy law practice. I was very satisfied with that work, and I was just trying to decide what to do when once again I realized that the treasurer's office has become a pretty big point of controversy in Madison County. And I realized that my background was perfectly suited for that job. I have almost 20 years of investment experience, and I work as a lawyer. I've lived in this community all of my life, and I just thought that I could bring something to get that treasurer's office back on track, and I was encouraged to do so, and so that's why I decided to run.
Unfortunately, in our society, there's a lot of people who don't read the papers, who don't know the news. They do vote.
Yes.
Some of them do. A lot of them don't, but there are a number of people who vote, but they're still unfamiliar with these issues that you're referring to. So I'd like you to be more specific. You just said that there has been some controversy which has followed in the treasurer's office. If you could please describe what it is you're referring to.
Well, I think that most people may be aware, at least somewhat, of a treasurer from 2 terms ago by the name of Fred Bathon, who got in some legal trouble, criminal trouble, to put it lightly.
There's a name from the past.
Yes.
Yes.
And he had been treasurer, I think, for several terms. I'm not really sure how long he had been in office, but he was accused of rigging the tax sales so that they would benefit his campaign donors and his buddies. And
so they would make more money
right.
rather than less money.
Right. The tax sales work, what happens is people become delinquent on their real estate taxes. The county needs to get the money somehow because they have an obligation to get those taxes and turn it over to the taxing authorities. And that's how our school districts, right, and our sewer districts, our levy districts, that's how they run. That's where they get their money. And so the county puts these properties up for auction for the back taxes. And what happens is people will come in and bid an interest rate that they will receive from the owner who may want to redeem the taxes eventually. it is traditionally a reverse auction. The maximum amount of interest that can be charged by statute is 18%. What Mr. Bathon was doing was starting at 0%. He was starting it right at the high end, so that when his friends and his campaign supporters would come in, and there was a handful of them, and now you're talking about, there would be 20, 30, 40 people, you're only talking about a handful of people, but it was enough to upset the apple cart and really affect the fairness of the auction, so that they would get these high interest rates without any real competition. He did not conduct a reverse auction. And he was caught, and he pled guilty. I think it was last year. He is now serving a prison sentence. Since then, there have been 2 treasurers. When Mr. Bathon resigned, he was replaced by a gentleman named Frank Miles, who really worked very hard at changing this process for the auctions and had put in place a reverse auction so that it was more fair. And then he was up for election, and Kurt Prenzler came in, and he won in 2010, 4 years ago. So Kurt Prenzler's been in office for 4 years. And he's, in my opinion, brought his own brand of controversy. So
what controversies are you referring to?
Well, he is a very, he's a fellow that is he's a Republican. Most office holders in Madison County are Democrats. And he believes, he tends to think that, Fred Bathon was running this illegal scam, so that seems to indict all Democrats, which in actuality, I think it was the Democrats who were the first ones to point out what this was going on. And so Prenzler has taken office in the past 4 years, and he has, in my opinion, politicized the office in a way. He constantly reminds us of these wrongdoings of Fred Bathon that happened over 7-8 years ago, and he did change the tax sale. He didn't reform the tax sale. Frank Miles reformed the tax sale, but Prenzler brought in an automated system that has become, in the past few years, popular throughout the state of Illinois. And so now the tax sales are automated, and you really can't hide any wrongdoing in the tax sales. And so the automated system was something that Mr. Miles had been looking at, but he was waiting until after the election. He didn't want to make any changes. And so, Kurt came in, he did that. But another thing that he did was he immediately, well, not immediately, after a couple of months, he sold some government bonds at a loss. And he at first said that these bonds were purchased illegally and that they were against the investment policy and that they were illegal. In reality, each treasurer can make their own investment policy. They can change it at the drop of a hat. So it's up to the treasurer what their investment policy is. And these bonds were U.S. Treasury AAA rated bonds, and they were step-up bonds. They had a maturity of, I think, 15 years, which seems rather long. But the thing is that they had a call feature so that the bonds were going to be redeemed much sooner. And in fact, they were redeemed 1.5 years into their life. And Prenzler took these bonds, and he made a big to-do about them being illegal and inappropriate. And he sold the bonds, and he incurred about a $370,000 loss by selling them. And the treasurer's duty is, one of his big duties is investing the excess funds in Madison County. And so he took this loss, he reinvested it in some other bonds, treasury bonds, that he also got a loss on. If he had held those bonds, they would have been called as anticipated. And he would have made a profit on those bonds. So when you take in the lost profit, the actual loss he made, the loss he made on the new bonds that he reinvested in, he lost almost $2 million of taxpayer money. And this is just the beginning of some of his bad investment decisions. So this has generated a lot of controversy over the past 4 years. The The auditor has been calling him out on these bad investment decisions. And he's also, I think, conducted his affairs in the office with, he's politicized the office. He goes against the county board and the county administration. He put up his own website so that he could put his own content up at a cost of $10,000 to the taxpayers. He used the excuse that it was for safety, for when people paid online. Well, if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see a little screenshot I took when I paid my taxes online, and there's a warning that this is not a secure site. So apparently that didn't work very well. He issues tax bills that are a thinly veiled political ad where he's touting his so-called successes. And what it's caused is a lot of dissension in Madison County. And it's caused a lot of problems. And there's a lack of cooperation from the treasurer's office. My goal is to get that treasurer's office back on track. I would like to use my back experience to take the politics out of that office.
What is your experience with investments that would make you able to predict better what the markets are going to do?
Nobody can predict with absolute certainty what the markets can do.
I said better.
Right? Nobody can do that. But what you can do is you have to be aware of how the markets work. You have to understand basic investment practices. You have to understand the bond markets, the interest rate fluctuations. I spent almost 20 years in the investment industry. I held a variety of licenses, from everything from a stockbroker's license to a registered securities principal to a registered investment advisor. I was able to supervise stockbrokers. I had a great deal of training, a great deal of experience. In the latter part of my career, I actually specialized in the investment of public funds. I would go to municipalities and different entities of government and go through their portfolios and make suggestions on how to maximize their rate of return. So I have the training and the actual hands-on experience to do this. But I also know that this is not a job for just any person to take. And so I would be willing to open up this job to one of two ways. I will have a professional handling these investments. One of two ways. Either I will hire an investment professional with hands-on actual experience in the investment industry, in particular in buying bonds, CDs, fixed income investments, or I will cooperate with the county board, who is right at this time actually interviewing professional investment advisors in order to supplement Kurt's actions so that they can maximize the rate of return. So but no matter what happens, no matter how that happens, the buck will stop with me, and I will be absolutely responsible for the investments in that office. And I'm willing to step up and take that responsibility and not blame it on other people, our mistakes, or the interest rate environment. So what you have to do when you're investing these types of money is take into consideration three things, and this is actually guided by statute, Illinois state statute for treasurers. You have to consider safety, liquidity, and rate of return. So when you do that, you just have to simply look at what you're going to be using the money for, the amount of money that's going to be invested, and the nature of the money. Is it something that's being held for a school district that's going to need the money in 2 months? Or is this something that's held for long-term capital improvements and the money may not be needed for several years? And when you do that, then you're able to structure your investments to maximize your rate of return. And I don't see my opponent has been doing that for the past 4 years.
I was going to ask you why the county has excess funds laying around that they need to invest. I suspect that taxpayers would be curious to know, why, if they're paying all that much money, why it's laying around to that extent, that you need to have a professional investor invest funds rather than having it sit in their checking accounts. Can you explain to them why that is?
It is a good question, and it's brought up a lot of times. Right now, I believe the county has a 300-day cash reserve. There is some rumblings and talk in the county board to decrease that cash reserve to perhaps 6 months, about 180 to 200 days. Whatever they want to do, that is not for the question to ask.
How do you go about that? How does that happen?
That's a function of the county board.
Well, no, I want people to understand. You say that right now that there's a 300-day flow, and you're saying the county board may want to take it to a 180-day flow. But in reality, when the tax bills come out, there's a fixed amount of money and people are writing checks, right? So all this money, I believe it starts in July and finishes in September.
That's right.
Is that correct? And so by some date in September, if everybody's paid, the county now has a big chunk of money in the bank, correct?
That's correct. But you have to remember that a big chunk of that money is going to be sent out to the taxing districts. That's part of the treasurer's job, is to make sure that that money is distributed according to their tax rates. So the money gets sent out to the taxing districts, and
automatically, like the schools, of course, are what, 60 or 70% of all of the monies that people write checks for.
Right.
Right. I'm talking about
I think that's about right.
Property tax checks.
Correct.
Is what
I think
we're
that's
talking
about right.
So do they send all this money over to Edwardsville, Collinsville, Granite City schools and just distribute this money right off the bat, or is the treasurer's office sitting on some of this money and then flowing it to them as they need it?
There are statutory requirements for when it has to be distributed. So it doesn't happen within days, but it does happen soon. And the excess funds is really the bulk of the funds that we're talking about that the treasurer has to invest. Now, that's the amount of funds that the treasurer has to invest is not anything that the treasurer can control. That is a function of the county board. If they want to perhaps change the tax rates, to do something to bring in less money into the coffers, if they want to do some capital improvements, that's what that money is there for. So it's not going to happen overnight, but it would be a process that the county board would have to follow probably over a period of several years in order to reduce that excess amount of funds. But you also have to remember is that Madison County is self-insured. So any type of catastrophe, a big lawsuit, anything like that, there has to be funds there and available to meet those obligations in the future. So Madison County is in really good financial shape, which is really great and says a lot for the governance of the county board, because I think they've done a great job through this bad economy. But what's happened is that they've over the past decade, they have counted on a rate of return that is at least the market rate of return for these types of funds, and it's
that's
my
pretty
opinion.
low nowadays.
Well, it is very low, but you can even get lower. So it's expected that the treasurer can do at least as well as a senior citizen going down and buying a $10,000 CD from their local bank, and I think in some of these cases he is not.
The office of treasurer is called a constitutional office, which means that it's a standalone office. You really are your own company, your own boss, right? As treasurer.
Right.
What I hear you saying is that the treasurer and the county board need to be working in concert towards overall goals?
No, the treasurer needs to advise the county board on especially like cash flow, and to let them know where the money is going, when it is going to be needed. It's the county board that's going to make decision on how that money is spent. The treasurer is like a safety deposit box. It's a safeguard for the money, and it's completely run by statute. So really the treasurer's office has absolutely no decision making on how this money is spent. But he or she does have the responsibility to safeguard it until it is spent.
So the trick, as far as you're concerned, to be a treasurer is to know how best to, when you're holding money, what you do with it during the time after it's received from the public, but before it's distributed to the public bodies that it's aimed at.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. That's a big part of the treasurer's job. And the other part of the job is to, to conduct these tax sales, to collect taxes, to distribute the taxes. Those, I think, are the four basics. There's some other things that the treasurer is responsible for, but that's the main duties. And it's a very important office because it does handle the taxpayers' money. There's a real fiduciary duty there. It's a very serious office. And that's why it shouldn't be politicized. You need a treasurer in there who will take the politics out of that office and who will really work to foster an atmosphere of bipartisanship and will reach across the aisle. I know we hear this term a lot from people running for Congress and that, but there are several, there's quite a few Republican county board members. And I would have absolutely no problem sitting down with those people and the Democrats and talking to them about what the county board needs, what Madison County needs in terms of cash flow, in terms of revenue, what their expectations are for me. I really envision this office being an office that serves the people and doesn't serve a party as it is right now.
That's what I meant, by the way, when I was talking about the treasurer being independent, but nevertheless having to be able to work with the county board.
Absolutely.
That what you described is what I was talking about. Let's just talk a little bit more about your background so that people would know that, just because you talk well doesn't necessarily mean that you actually know how to do the job. Tell people you have been in a small business for quite a while.
Yes.
So describe that. Describe your investing background and why those two things lead you to believe that you could operate the treasurer's office effectively.
Well, as I said, I spent almost 20 years in the investment industry.
Right.
And
what's this small business?
My husband and I own a small trucking company. And we bought this company I believe it was 1991, in the early 1990s, from an estate. Two brothers had run this trucking company. There were only a handful of trucks and 2 drivers left by the time we purchased it. And I'm very proud of my husband, what he's done with this company. There's 2 divisions. They haul asset in one, and they do construction, dump trailer, and dump truck work in the other. And it's a union trucking company. They're Teamsters there. And it's been very successful. At the time we bought it, my husband was working at McDonnell Douglas. So he was doing 2 jobs. I was working full-time. We were building up this company in the evenings, on the weekends, a lot of phone calls and vacation days being taken. And finally, my husband made the plunge, left McDonnell Douglas, devoted full-time to it. And at the same time, we had a young family, and we have 1 child. I walked away from the investment industry to support him in that. I'm very proud to say that this trucking company, even through the worst times in the economy, has turned a profit every single year that we have owned it. I don't know the exact number of trucks that are owned now, our vehicles and tractors, but I do know that their truck drivers, it's 10 to 15 drivers at any time. These are good union, high-paying jobs with benefits. They have a retirement plan, paid vacation, full health care for them and their families. And I'm very proud of the job that we've done there, and very proud of what my husband has done there.
Mm-hmm. Now we have time goes by fast. We got about 4 minutes left here.
Okay.
Yes. So how do you go from what you just described at the very beginning when I was introducing you, now you're a lawyer?
Well, it was something that I had always wanted to do, and it was just a progression into a different new part of my life. I'd always wanted to be a lawyer. With my family's encouragement, after the trucking company kind of got onto solid ground and my son was older, the day my son started college, I started law school. Mm-hmm. So I'm what they call a later in life lawyer, and I absolutely love it. I love it because I can help people. I'm my own boss.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to school at St. Louis University School of Law, and it was me and the kids. I was often mistaken for one of the professors, And it was a great experience, and I really loved it. And one of the big decisions I had to make about running for treasurer, and this just shows you how committed I am, is that I do commit that this is going to be my only job. So I will be walking away from my law practice. I will be closing it down. I will not be practicing as a lawyer on the side. I do know that Mr. Prenzler has a daycare that he runs on the side in St. Louis, and so he's not devoting full time to the treasurer's office. I will be a full-time treasurer. It was a big decision for me to leave this job that I love, but I don't intend to give up my law license. It will always be there, and I will always be able to say I'm a lawyer.
There is life after politics, by
That's
the way.
right.
So we do have to earn a living even after, because let's say that you did unseat Mr. Prenzler. That means that there was a treasurer who was unseated, which could
That's
be
right.
you next time
4
or the
years
time
down
after
the road,
that. Right. So yeah, hang on to that law license.
No, the law license is going nowhere.
Hang on to the trucking company.
Yes.
So you like being a lawyer.
I do.
You liked doing your investment work.
Yes.
And you think that that being the treasurer would fit right into your sum total of life experiences.
Absolutely. It's difficult to run a business in this day and age. It's difficult to be responsible for writing those paychecks and for people's livelihoods. And it's a lot of pressure. But I think that we have proven ourselves that we're stable. I come from this area. I've lived in this area all of my life. I am committed to this community. And this is where I intend to stay, and I'm excited about the prospect of serving the community as treasurer. I think it's just a perfect fit with my background.
Mm-hmm. So let's see, you're looking out towards November 4th. Is that the date?
That's the date.
The general election.
40-something days, I think, is left. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, by the time people actually see that, although we will say to people right now that this is going to be uploaded to YouTube, so that if they're seeing this even before it actually airs on Charter, that keep passing that link around, right?
Right, that's right.
So I guess you'll have that link available to them somewhere
Absolutely.
at or near your website. So in the last 30 seconds, what would you like to add to the public?
Well, I just want to emphasize the fact that the treasurer's office belongs to the people. And that's all I want to do, is serve the people, maximize the rate of return, work with the county board to do the job the best we can, and make sure that we reach out and that everybody has great service from the treasurer's office, and that everybody there will be happy and willing to serve them. And it's the taxpayers who own that office, not the county board, not the county government. It's the taxpayers, and that will be my first priority.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much
Thank
for being
you.
with us today. I told you at the beginning that this would be fun.
It does go fast.
Yeah, and it goes fast, but it is fun. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And I've been speaking to Marleen Suarez. She is an attorney. She is an investment person. She has much experience, and she wants to be Madison County, Illinois' next treasurer. Thank you very much for being with us. We'll see you next time.